Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Sajal Debnath, and this is a new series of blogs that I plan to write on SaaS offerings from VMware. And I'm going to mainly focus on cloud services that is available from VMware. And the agenda of this blog series is going to be what is multi-cloud solution, cloud assembly constructs, and how to set it up, tags, projects, blueprints, and then demo in between. Now, this is going to be multiple parts. In the first part, we're going to cover the first 2 points of this agenda, which is multi-cloud solution and cloud assembly. What is cloud assembly and what are the contracts, constructs, and setting up? So, without wasting time, let's start and discuss about multi-cloud solution. Now, what is a multi-cloud solution? If you remember, we started our journey as an IT industry perspective. We started virtualizing our workloads first. So we had a virtual infrastructure, and still the virtual infrastructure is the base for configuring anything on top of it, cloud or anything. So we had a virtual infrastructure, and then AWS came up with public cloud. Right? Amazon came up with that public cloud concept. So we had a virtual infrastructure, and then public cloud and private cloud, something similar to the public cloud. We had private cloud. Now, once the organization started consuming both private cloud and public cloud, they decided that why not, or there was a requirement of tying these two together. So we had something called hybrid cloud, right? So a hybrid cloud is a mixture of or uh, a way of consuming both private and public cloud together. That was hybrid cloud. Now, as and when more and more public cloud solutions are available or became available, like Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, so organizations started consuming multiple clouds instead of a single public cloud. They are now consuming more and more public clouds because something is better from someone. So now there is a requirement in the market in the present day, a platform, a single platform, a single console from where I can manage everything, my private cloud and my public cloud, multiple public cloud solutions. So multi-cloud solution is a solution which is aiming to solve that problem. So it provides you a single pane of glass, a single management console through which you can consume, monitor, and manage your entire environment. It may be your private cloud environment, it could maybe your virtual data center, or it may be multiple public clouds. So all of them together, it's a multi-cloud solution. So no, so if I look into the definition, so it's no more limited to a single private cloud or public cloud or hybrid cloud. Now it's multi-cloud. So we are in this multi-cloud era. Now, if I look at from a VMware's perspective, what's a VMware solution in this particular area, and this is what we are going to talk about. So the solution from VMware, at the base layer or the virtual infrastructure layer, we have a vCenter server, a data center build up of on top of vCenter server, which has network, compute, and storage aspect, and then we extend this to include the multiple public cloud solutions like IBM solution, Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, or VMware Cloud on AWS. So we have all those public cloud providers, and we combine this with the private cloud or private data center solutions. Now we have our infrastructure layer because I can consume the resources from here, right? But then building a foundation or infrastructure is not enough, isn't it? So most of the times we build the servers, and then we spend majority of the time in maintaining and monitoring this. So we need something on top of that which is intelligent. uh, so because we're talking about cloud solutions, public cloud solutions, or multi-cloud solutions, we need something which is more intelligent than your traditional operations. So, which includes not only the workload placement, capacity, performance, log analytics, but other aspects as well. But these are the major aspects. The major workload placement is important because right now you have options, multiple options for you to decide where to deploy the workloads. So you want to deploy a workload, which is the optimum place for deploying that particular workload. So you need to decide on that. You need to keep a track of your capacity. A new project is coming. Where would you deploy that those workloads, whether you have enough capacity or not? And obviously you need to maintain the performance, which platform is giving you the best performance. If you're not meeting your performance criteria, then what are the problems? So you need to find out those performance problem or meeting the performance as well, and then log analytics, because as it grows more bigger and bigger, you need more in-depth view and easier way of analyzing the logs. So you combine all of these together, and then uh, you get your platform ready. Now, from user's perspective, the consumption perspective, right? The end users are your consumers. So don't really care about what is running at your virtual infrastructure layer. They don't even care what are the attached solution. They only care about the different services that are available to them and how they consume those services. So you have service catalog, which is provided to the end consumers. They just simply interact with it and then consume the services that are provided as a catalog items. But to provide those service catalogs, you need to have content, because those are the contents, that content development option. So you should be, as an admin, should be able to develop those content and maintain, manage those contents. And then specifically for enterprise, for an end user perspective, probably it doesn't matter that much. But then we are talking about enterprise customers or large customers or business perspective. They should be able to manage who gets access to what, right? So who can consume these resources and who cannot. So you need to have some kind of user access mechanism, which is provided by cloud zones, projects, and then different other entities, which we will talk later. So these are all consumption layer. These options lies in the consumption layer. And next, I VMware option, multi-cloud solution extends this, integrates it with a marketplace where you can simply go ahead, instead of building your own content, you can simply go ahead and download the content and consume it as it is. Someone has already built these contents for you out, you don't need to do complex blueprints or build complex blueprints. You can simply go ahead and consume these contents from marketplace. And then there's a repository version control that is available to you. You can simply check in, check out your admin team multiple, because in enterprise environment it is multiple teams, right? So it's not that a single person is maintaining or managing the blueprint. So I have created a blueprint as a base layer, and then someone else uses this blueprint and modifies something, an application adds an application or something more is added to that. Now how will he manage it or release it further to his team? So they can simply do a version, give a version, or version controlling. Through the version controlling mechanism, they can share it, his own version or her own version, within his or her team. So that's the purpose of repository. Now this is what typically a multi-cloud solution should look like. There are other solutions in the market as well. So a typical multi-cloud solution which provides a single pane of glass to provide these should look like this. VMware solution extends this to take it further one step and integrate it with multiple tools. It provides you the extensibility options where you can integrate this entire solution with third-party tools like GitHub, GitLab for repository control, Jenkins with Kubernetes, with Puppet, with Chef, Pivotal Container Service to build a CI/CD pipeline. So this is the third option that you can get with this SaaS solution from VMware. So not only would you be able to provide the normal cloud services or the service catalogs, but you should be able to, your developer should be able to build a CI/CD pipeline. So holistically, this can provide you an infrastructure as code platform. That means I can define my blueprints once, and irrespective of whatever my endpoints, that blueprint will work. So that blueprint would modify itself, so that if it's Google Cloud, it should be applicable to that. If it's AWS, it should be intelligent enough to make the modifications that it would be deployed there as well. This is where the abstraction comes, and that is where the infrastructure as code concept comes. You define your infrastructure once, and you deploy and maintain it as like you do for any code, any application. You can even as you can see that you can build your own CI/CD pipeline for the infrastructure as well. Now, all of this, since you have the complex environment, you define tags uh, for different capabilities and define policies. Based on the capabilities and the policies, it would define where these resources will be deployed. So end users, the consumers, goes ahead and requests for the catalog item, and based on the capabilities that is defined in those policies, it would go into multiple endpoints. So that's how it's binded all together. And now once I have deployed anything and everything, I need to monitor that environment. So for I build solution for test environment, for production environment, and an application that matters, right? So as an infra admin, infrastructure matters to me. I know how important it is, right? This ensures that everything keeps running uh, smooth and stable and secure. But look at from end users perspective, do they really care that whatever they are interacting with, whether it is running on AWS or your own data center, they don't care about it, right? I mean, heck, I will go ahead and go one step and ahead, and I would say they don't really care about the applications as well. All they care about, your end consumers, is the UI. So if that is true for any application, for any organization, the end users who interact with that UI, they care about that UI, what are the options that is available to them, how does it look, whether it's user friendly or not. They don't really care what kind of database that you are using at the back end, whether it's a typical relational database, or it's a NoSQL database or in-memory database. They don't really care. They don't even care what kind of web server that you are running or serving those pages. All they care about is their UI. But as an application admin or infra admin, you should be worried about your application more than than the underlying infrastructure. So how the application is performing. If the application performs well, you are well and good. So you need to not only monitor your infrastructure. Traditionally, in any data center, we have monitoring, which is typically for your infrastructure monitoring, and then for one or two application you have separate applications monitoring. But then in this new age, you typically need to monitor your entire application platform and then infrastructure platform as well, and there's a separate category altogether. So you should have the capabilities of monitoring your application as well. And now the end users, they not only interact with the UI, with the products, consume it through the UI, but then consume it programmatically as well. And that becomes very important for the developers when they build their CI/CD pipeline, or they're building any application, or they want to consume the resources. Typically, they tend to automate the things so that they can do it from programmatically, or using the command line, or their own customizations options, or their own scripts. So it should have today, ev- every solution that you see out there, they have their own APIs exposed for the end users to consume. So you not only can interact with through the UI, but you interact through API as well. So you have cloud APIs and SDDC APIs available from VMware to be consumed by the developers or whoever wants to automate these solutions end to end, right? So this is what multi-cloud solutions is all about. Now, if I want to tag it, that was a generic description. Now, if I want to go more into it, like how and what are the solution exact names or exact options available from VMware. So before I do that, let's categorize the uh, possible solutions. Now, as you can see, again coming back to the solution, I have private cloud or data center, and then public cloud, and one interesting aspect, this is branch and or edge compute. So I have all these infrastructure layer. On top of that, I have cloud API and then management and operations, integrated into it. So blueprint and cloud APIs, which are the infrastructure portion of it, cloud APIs to uh, manage, monitor your compute, storage, network, and security. So Blueprint and Cloud APIs, these are the infrastructure. These portions are managed by something which is called Cloud Assembly. This is the solution. So when you log into VMware SaaS platform or this SaaS website, you would see that there's a service called Cloud Assembly. So that is actually for managing your blueprints, defining your blueprints, and managing your infrastructure. Now, I would say this is typically used by admins. Your end users don't use the Cloud Assembly solution because the blueprints are defined by your admins and used by them. And then catalog services, which is something that service is given by so is known by the name service broker. And your end users, say it may be developers, your line of business users, they would typically interact with a service broker through UIs. If they want to consume the resources through UI only, then they would go ahead and have access to service broker where it's only catalog services. And then the third option is, or the third service is CD pipeline, the continuous delivery pipeline, and then typically it would be used by your developers or your CI/CD admins. And the code stream, that is known as code stream. So they would allow the developer teams to release their software and maintain their CI/CD pipeline. They would build their CI/CD pipeline and maintain it through code stream. So though VMS SaaS service includes other aspects of it, but these are the three major areas that we can say we are going to talk about, because these are the these are at the core of the solution, automation solution, I would say. Okay, so this particular series and this particular blog post as well, I'm going to talk about cloud assembly. So let's go ahead and talk about the different constructs and how to set up cloud assembly. This is the part one of the series, and in this part I'm going to talk about this only. So what are the different constructs that are available for cloud assembly? Now, note one thing, under infrastructure, you see different categories. So there is not a single option as infrastructure, it's a collection of options, and we would collectively call them as infrastructure because it actually relates to the infrastructure of the underlying solution or the infrastructure of the environment. So we have four different major categories. One is infrastructure, then project, blueprint, and deployment. These are the four building blocks or the concepts of the constructs, I would say. Now, infrastructure is again subdivided by three major areas. One is cloud zone, so for cloud account regions, and then the mappings and profiles. And let me just explain these a bit more. Say infrastructure is your cloud account. Say you have AWS account, you have your own private data center, that is cloud accounts. So you add your AWS subscription, and then you have access to AWS East, you say US East and US West. So these are the two different regions. When you do a deployment, you need to actually decide which region this deployment will be part of. So you have multiple zones available to you, and you need to define these zones, say US East and then US West. And then obviously if you have a private data center, say at in San Francisco, you said define, okay, this is a San Francisco data center. I have another one in Seattle center, Seattle data center. So you define these zones first, and then comes the mapping. And when you say mappings, it's flavor mapping and image mapping. Flavor is like custom t-shirting. You have small, you define something small, medium, large, or X XYZ, and then you define that for AWS this is t2.micro. A small relates to t2.micro in AWS, but then when it comes to your private data center, a small actually relates to a virtual machine with one CPU, 1 GB of RAM. That is your flavor mapping. Image mapping is your template. So it's a Linux template, it's a Windows template, or say Windows 2016, Windows 2012, or say Ubuntu. So that's your image mapping. And if it maps to your local data center, what's the image that it map to? And same thing when it goes to AWS, which image it maps to. So that's the image mapping, and that's again to do with your infrastructure. You're still dealing with your infrastructure. The last part of this infrastructure is profiles. So now profile, you need to define your network and storage. So when you define your zones, you have your compute tagged there, that this is the zone that I'm going to talk about, and this is the compute that I'm going to utilize. But then within that zone as well, you have multiple network and storage profile, storage available to you, right? So you need to define, okay, within this zone as well, these are the network profiles that is available to me. These are the storage profiles that is available to me. So you define those network and storage, and then you come to project. A project is a logical entity. It's a way to define which users have access to which infrastructure. That's what a project is. Blueprint is a well-known entity. It's if you have utilized vRealize automation, it's a blueprint where you define, okay, what are the constructs that are going to be there under that catalog service or under that offering, which are the network profiles that is going to be utilized. It's just the definition of it, it's not the resource. Deployments on the other hand is the actual deployments. So you utilize blueprint and do a deployment. So blueprints doesn't take resources from your infrastructure, but then once they are deployed, the resources are deployed. So deployment is a logical entity which encapsulates the VMs or the entities that are defined in a single blueprint. So through a deployment, the end users can manage the resources that they have deployed. So these are the major constructs of cloud assembly, and let's have a look at how they relate to each other. So under infrastructure, you define your cloud accounts. Within the cloud account, you may have multiple regions, and then you map those regions or say data centers by cloud zone, defining cloud zones. Then you define your mapping, which is your say based out of your image, flavor, network, storage. So you define mapping and profiles per region, and then you define your project. You say, okay, this is a project, these are the users that are going to be part of that project, and these are the resources that are related to this project. So that's how it's tagged. And then you define a blueprint. uh, a blueprint In a blueprint, you say, okay, these are the logical constructs, these are the definitions of the machines that's going to be there, and these are network, this is in storage. It may be simple, it may be complex, but then blueprints are tagged directly with projects. So blueprints are tied to projects, so they don't really consume resource directly, or end users don't consume resources directly. They just go ahead and request for the catalogs, and that catalog comes from a blueprint. That blueprint defines what are the machines that would be deployed, what are the network storage that would be consumed. So end users, they actually consume the resources indirectly through blueprints. And then once the machines are deployed, you can manage, monitor, and further configure due date actions on those deployments through the way of managing the deployments. So these are the construct relations. And one the way to set up everything is, say you have a cloud account, and how do you set up the environment? Say, from what are the bare minimum things that you need to do? So you need to log in as a cloud administrator in the SaaS portal. Once you do that, then the first thing you need to do is add cloud accounts. Cloud accounts is your resources, your endpoints, and then you define a zone. You need a minimum of a single cloud zone. Define a project which will tag the zone with the project, and define the users that may consume those resources defined in the project. Then you define flavor mapping, you do image mapping, and then you create a blueprint and you can deploy the blueprint. That's the bare minimum setup workflow that you can do to get up and running in cloud, right? So this is how it looks in the cloud automation. This is how different constructs are defined, and this is how you should set up. Let's go ahead and have a look at the environment. So let's sign into my account. Now remember, this is this is an environment which is utilized by all of my team members. So if you see a lot of error messages or something, don't worry about that. We purposefully break the environment because we do a lot of testing here. Okay, so once you log into your environment, you would get to see a list of the services that are available to you. So you see my services, I have access to these the services, and as I was saying, Cloud Assembly, Service Broker, and CodeStream. These are three major services which provides the automated automation services there. I have Log Intelligence as well, and there are other services, SaaS services offered from VMware, which I don't have access to. If I need access, I need to request for access, and then admin can give me access to that. The service broker is something the end users talk to. They just log in there, and there's just catalog items. There is nothing else. Let's have a look at that. Just have a look at that, how it looks. So whatever, as an admin, whatever blueprints that I define and say release to the service broker, these are available to it as catalog items. And as you can see, I just only see the catalog items. I request for it, and then I can see the deployments, all the deployments that's there. So as an end user, if I don't have access to anything else, I would just see it here. Now Cloud Assembly, when I log in as an admin, on the other hand, has four different tabs. One is deployments, where I get to see the same list of deployments. And then I have access to blueprints. I can define the blueprints. And the major or the most important tab is probably infrastructure. I need to start from here. And then extensibility and the marketplace. If you go to marketplace, and we were talking about marketplace, that we can integrate with marketplace, and then simply, instead of defining my own blueprint, I can simply come here and then say data warehousing service on AWS Reddit. I can simply go ahead and say get it. It, I can say database as a service on AWS RDS. I can simply get it, because these are all predefined blueprints that are available to you or everyone else. So I can simply go ahead and search for something here, say SQL, and see whether if anything is available by the name of SQL. I don't see it anything by SQL. I can search by database and see. I don't see anything just as a database as well, or say. So that's what are the blueprints and what are the images that's available. You can simply search by it, and then you can go ahead and get those images or the blueprints. Okay. Now we start here in the infrastructure, and the first thing that we need to do is add a cloud account. Now, one point to note here, as you can see that if you click on a cloud account, it can be AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, NSXT, NSXV, VMware Cloud on AWS, or vCenter Server. Now, if you are adding AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, you don't need anything else, because VMware SaaS platform directly talks to the APIs available from these platforms. But then if you are want to utilize your own private data center, an existing vCenter server, you need to add something called Cloud Proxy or cloud collector. So it collects data from the data center, sends it here, and your SaaS platform talks to the vCenter server through the proxy, so that your entire data center is not open to internet. You have something in between as a broker, and that's the way you can build secure environment. So if you already have a cloud proxy deployed, it's well and good. Otherwise, you need to click on new cloud proxy, download the OVA, and deploy the OVA in your data center. And then at the time of deployment, it will ask you for a key. You copy and paste this this is key, sorry, um, and it would tie it together with this cloud account. Now I need to provide a vCenter server IP or FQDN, and then click on the cloud proxy. You would be able to see a list of proxy that is available to you. Provide the username password of the vCenter server and click on validate, and then provide it a name that would be visible here. Give it a description, then capability tags. Now these tags you would see everywhere, these capability tags, and then tags is very important for the entire operation of the environment. So we will talk about tags in the next version, but for this release we would not discuss about tag. But at each and every point you would be able to see that tagging is very important, that defines how the workflows are working. Coming back to it, so once you add a new cloud, the other thing is cloud proxies. You would be able to see this health of the proxies, and what are the IP, the creation date, their services that they are offering. And then a cloud proxy can offer code stream capabilities, log intelligence, cloud assembly orchestrator or blueprint, or cloud assembly as a whole. You can define those services to it, and then you can see what's the health of that, what is the CPU utilization, memory utilization of that proxy, and you can manage it from here, right? Now once you define the cloud accounts, you would be able to see the compute resources available to that particular account, the networks that is available, the storage that is available, most importantly all the existing machines that are deployed in that particular vCenter server or any account that you have. So that becomes very important because there is some interesting feature called onboarding, where you can actually utilize or import all the existing workflows or all the existing VMs under a deployment here. So you can simply go ahead and start managing those through CAS platform, through this SaaS platform. So that becomes very interesting, those onboard machines, right? Now once I added this cloud accounts, I couldn't see all this resources. It's just a view purpose. The resources are the viewing purpose. But the first thing I would do is define a cloud zone. So say for example, this is my cloud zone, and I can see that this is the account or region that I have selected. I have provided it a name, and then placement policy. I have provided capability tag. The compute, for compute I have selected some compute from for this, and then this tagged with a project. So if I simply say new cloud zone, you will have to tie it with an account, give it a name, placement policy, give it capability tags. You should be able to see the computes. You need to define that which are the compute resources that you are going to utilize for this zone, and then the projects that it ties to. Project you will not be able to define it here. Project we will tie it up in the projects tag. So that is how you define a cloud zone. Coming to projects, if I say I want to define a new project, just give it a name and description, and then say who are the users who can utilize that uh, project. And there are two roles available to you, one is administrator and member. And say you can add users as well, and provisioning, which cloud zone they should be able to provision to. So here we should be able to define the zone, give it a provisioning priority. You can have multiple zones, so you can give it a priority and then give it instance limit, memory limit, that information, so you can add multiple zones and give priorities to it as well in the project. So a project can have access to multiple zones. And then there are something called constraints, storage, network, extensibility constraints. Again, it's key value pair. We will talk about it in the next part when we talk about tags. You can define custom properties, and then request timeout if you want to do. And then if you have any existing integrations. Now when you select a cloud zone and add it into the provisioning tab, if you go to cloud zone and select that zone, you would be able to see that that is tagged with the, say for example, that particular project, right? So that's how the project and cloud zones are related to each other. Next thing we will do is a flavor mapping. we just define a flavor. Say for example, it's some small flavor. I know if it goes into this vCenter server, I have this size, and then for this vCenter server, this is this size. Now I can add a flavor. Say for example, this is an AWS region. I can simply search for the flavor, click on that, and then it searches for the flavors for me, and I say IT too small. If it goes to AWS, Azure, I would say these are the flavors that's available to me. Standard underscore say A0. So a flavors by the name small relates to different sizes available in different endpoints, depending on which endpoint that it gets gets deployed to. So that's where the flavoring mapping is very important. And then we come to image mapping, and then say I provide a new image mapping photon, say OS, say for example OS, and then I define that for this particular data center, it would going to search and show all the templates that's available to me, and that is the template that's available to me, and I can define a cloud config from here as well. The same photon OS, if I again select the AWS, it shows me all the images that is available there. I can select anyone else from here. So I say, if I select Photon OS in this particular data center, this is the template that is going to utilize. For AWS, it's going to utilize this. So that's how I say this is how the image mapping is done. And then network profiles. I define a network, and then say this is the account or region, this is a name, and then what are the networks that are available to it. So I would be able to see a list of the networks that are available to me. I can add it to the network. I can provide a tagging mechanism. I can add different tags. Say I define the CID, a domain gateway DNS server. That's how I define the networks there. And then network policies, if you want to add any network policies, which edge cluster, edge data store, or that it utilizes. If you want to add any load balancer, you should be able to select the load balancer, and then security. So that's how you define the networks for that particular, for any particular zone. And similar thing goes for storage. You would just define the storage that's available, and then different storage policies, what is the provisioning type, what is the share, if there is any IOPS limit, or what's the disk mode. You can define all of these under the storage profiles. So once this is done, that means your environment is ready. Now you can go ahead and create blueprints. So if I go to blueprints, I'd say this is a blueprint that I had already created. So this machine, it's going to utilize the image, say Photon OS. So I have made a change in the image and everything. So right. So this here what I would do, I can see on the left hand side, you see that the cloud agnostic environment and vSphere specific, AWS specific, and then Microsoft Azure specific configuration management puppet. I can click and drag. I see PKS Kubernetes cluster, all of that environment. I can simply select a machine. It would come here on the right hand side. This is a YML format. I can simply say, okay, this is the flavor. Let me just say medium flavor. The image is a Photon OS image that is available to me. I just defined it Photon OS. So I'm going to utilize that Photon OS image, and simply similarly I can go ahead and actually modify this for other machines as well. So if I go to select and say Photon OS, and then I say networking, I simply click and drag. So I on the left hand side I can do that, or I can manually add the environment. And then I say I want to give it a new version. So last version was 1.1, so last next version is 1.2. So I say added another VM. Change log is added another VM. I say created. Now I can go ahead and simply click on deploy to deploy it in my environment, and I can go ahead and check the version history. I can see that there was 1.0, 1.1 and 1.2. 1.0 is released. Of course, you can see that it's unreleased, so it's released. When I click on release, it would actually go ahead and release it to the service catalog, so it would be available as the as a catalog item to the end users. These two versions I have not released yet. I can clone it, deploy it, or download the configuration, so that in the YML format, so that next time if I want to utilize this, I can simply import the blueprint from the YML format. Now the interesting thing is difference. I see that my current version is 1.2. I want to see from 1.0 what are the things that I had changed. And I can see that these are the things that I had changed. The Photon SDN was an image. Now it's Photon OS is the image now. Now, if I want to see visually, I see that two machines were added between 1.0 to 1.1, and in cloud machine one property was modified. So I can see that, okay, there is one property that was modified. If I select code perspective, I see that photon wise was the property that was modified between these two versions. What about 1.1? So I could see there is only one machine that was added. So let's see visually, there is one machine that was added and then two properties were modified. So I would be able to keep a track of these, the changes that I make, and that's very interesting. And I can deploy any of the versions, say version 1.2 or version 1.1 or 1.0, based on what I want. So this is what a blueprint looks like. Now once, and then they see those blueprints, they get tied to the projects. And when I define, let's go ahead and say define a new blueprint. So new blueprint, say test, and then it selects the project where I want to do it. So blueprints are directly tied to the projects all the time. Okay. Now the deployments, one interesting thing is, if I say this is my deployment, and what is the history of this deployment, one thing is very interesting is provisioning diagram. Now, I in the SaaS platform, since I have access to multiple cloud platform, my private cloud or the vCenter server, private data center, so deciding which VM goes where is very important. So actually, what I can do, I can select and see how the machine was allocated. What are the logical flows that it went through to allocate that machine? How that machine was provisioned? What are the logical flows that it went through? What are the steps that it did to allocate and provision that machine? If I go to dev mode, I'd be able to see what are the exact tasks that it did. And this becomes very important in troubleshooting, because if it fails in any place, I know what it did, what task it did, what event was happening. So if anything fails, this becomes really really important, whether there was anything that's failed, what particular stage it failed, and I should be able to troubleshoot that entire environment really really quickly, because it's all in front of me. I know what is happening and what stage I am. So this becomes very important for troubleshooting, specifically this map, where it shows what are the different what when the request was done, which project it chose, what flavor mapping, image mapping, what exact steps it went through to decide where it should go, right? So that is how and what cloud assembly is. That is how you would set it up and start consuming it. In the next part, I'm going to talk about tags and how you utilize and tie everything together. Till that time, keep keep safe, keep posted, and I hope it helped you as it helped me. Thank you for watching this video.